Today at Liverpool Theatres, I am joined by the dynamic duo that is Terry Johnson and Shaun Chambers because they are getting ready to bring Terry's play, The Sex Party, to Hope Street Theatre, Liverpool from the 1st of September. Now, of course, Terry is an Olivier and Tony Award-winning writer and director whose writing and adaptation credits include so many different things. We are talking Dead Funny, Hysteria, Mrs. Henderson Presents, The Graduate, Cleo, Camping, Emmanuelle and Dick, whilst directing credits include, of course, La Cage aux Folles, Strictly Ballroom, The Libertine, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Meanwhile, Shaun is the co-founder and artistic director for the Northern Comedy Theatre Company, who have put on some cracking plays, including Blithe Spirit, How Not to Do the Nativity, Doing Dickens, which was a world premiere, The Pink Panther Strikes Again, and No Sex Please, We're British, to name a few. So we're in good company today. So thank you both for joining me to talk about this collaboration on The Sex Party. I'm very excited.
So,
good morning. Yeah. So Shaun, if we start with you, Northern Comedy Theatre are putting this on. So tell us a little bit about your theatre company, first of all.
okay, so we've been around for about 10 years in Liverpool and the Northwest. It was founded by me and a guy called Tom Platt, who went on to work with Mischief, the multi-award winning comedy group. So then he left because he was doing myself, and the aim of it really was to develop new pieces, and so we collaborated with a lot of new writers, mainly a guy called David Spicer, who wrote about 10, 12 plays for us. That you mentioned, Doing Dickens. He wrote a whole series of doing Shakespeare, doing the Dead, doing the Magic, lots of different plays that we toured around, and you just mentioned we also do a lot of classic plays as well that you just cited some of, and then we were lucky to work with Nigel Planer and premiered one of his plays called All Above Board. And that's where the link with Terry came, because I was telling Nigel how much I enjoyed Terry's work, and we were doing a play called Hitchcock Blonde that Terry had written, and Nigel put me in touch with Terry, and then that's where this kind of collaboration started. So I think from our perspective as a company, we're just really interested in working with new writing and writers, particularly being there when pieces are sort of being formed, and often being the first to do them. But albeit we do the classics as well, because there's still a big market for that.
Brilliant. And Terry, you obviously have written this, but you are also directing it as well. So when you've written something and you've directed it, do you find that that's a natural extension for you, or do you treat it differently to if you're directing someone else's work, or does it will you just kind of go, nope, I need to just put my directing head on? Where does it kind of begin and end for you?
It's a very natural process for me, because I think I'm always at odds with the term writer, because the only things I've ever written are plays or polite letters to Wandsworth Council. I was always a playmaker right from the beginning, and the reason I wrote plays was to get in the door. It was like a 60-page calling card, and I was good enough at it to get in that door. So there was a strange year many years ago. This is my 50th year, I realize, in the business. Many years ago, there was a year when I came up with Hysteria and Dead Funny, and I kind of knew in my heart that the only way to finish Hysteria would be to have a senior director on it. Phillida Lloyd took it in the end. But I also knew that Dead Funny would be mine. And that was my first auteur outing. And since then, that's all I've done. Better or worse, who knows? I've just always taken them all the way through.
Brilliant. I love it. So tell us about the story then. What is the sex party all about?
Well, all I've ever written about is sex and comedy, really, in one guise or another. And I guess this was a long overdue bookend um, to Dead Funny. I mean, Dead Funny was about English sexual neurosis, really, in the guise of a celebration of English comics, which is a perfectly genuine overlap. Um, this again, it was a crucible in with it was a crucible into which one could pour all one's thoughts about uh, sexuality, English sexuality right now, and its paradoxes. Uh, and it's a very different period. So it's no longer a party about dead comedians. It's a party about sex.
Mm. Yeah, and there's all these different characters. So there's four couples, isn't there, that kind of come and they're all there for different reasons. They might have different experiences of these kind of parties, and it's kind of following their individual stories beyond the party that are kind of brought in. But you've then got, like you've said, these themes and things that are brought in. So there's kind of a really clever mix of character versus plot versus conversational pieces that are going to get people talking. And it seems like a really good way to cover everything and bring in a wide audience, which I suppose when you're writing, you write, and then Shaun, when you're putting a play on, you've got to look for things that appeal to you as a company and match what you're doing, but that speak to a wider audience where you can get people in. And it kind of feels that this ticks all of those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we our our motto as a company is fearlessly funny, and we've always sort of stuck with that. We like to do the things that may not be tackled or where some companies may run a mile from. We welcome that, and I know when David was writing for us, some of the things he'd write were pretty on the edge, and I'd look at them and just think, "Oh God, this is really edgy." And but then we remember that fearlessly funny, and it's we sort of almost feel it's our duty to sort of fight against this. Sometimes this agenda of theatre needs to be sterile and clean and not upset anybody. And for me, theatre and particularly comedy always should upset and question. And I think doing it through a comedic way is a good way of probing issues that may some people might feel uncomfortable about. And I think theatre's lost a bit of that, where it's going a little safe and it's worrying to upset and challenge. So I think that's why this
That's
piece appeals to me.
yeah, and that's where um, Shaun and I come together, really. Um, Theatre has, without doubt, lost its edge. There are things that we are not allowed, or we are frowned upon putting things on stage now, which are far milder and less contentious than your average night on Netflix. Cutting edge is actually on the telly,
Yeah.
and theatre has thrown up its hands in mock despair and gone, no, 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 we really can't say that. So that all that's left at the moment, I mean, uh, I'm very embracing of the inclusivity movement that's happened. That's a very good thing and long overdue. But hand in hand with that has become a woke gentility, in that theatre is not meant in any way to upset or challenge the audience.
Mm.
which is why they run a gamut of warnings as they go into the show. You know, the gunshot I used to understand.
Yeah.
The smoke, yes, because you'll choke. But a detailed description of what you're going to get. It's infantilizing, and it's a. I have no idea whether it's a trend that will continue, but it's done huge damage to authorial voices
Mm.
because ultimately it it removes dissent.
Yeah.
So you know, so the Sex Party doesn't really worry about that. The Sex Party could have been written in 1972, um, and it's still about the people uh, in Middle England. I mean, interestingly enough, this is not a very challenging play at all for anyone under 30 because club nights have become sex positive, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of uh, sex positive social activities going on. Um, much more actually than when I sat down to write the play, which was kind of during
Yeah.
lockdown. And as part of, you know, the release from lockdown, uh, things have got much richer.
It's a nice way to say it. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's, you know, we can't pretend that things don't happen just in case they upset somebody. They've got to be spoken about so that if they upset you, well, let's figure out why they're upsetting you and let's have that conversation. And so I fully agree, and I applaud both of you for, you know, just going and doing what you want to do, because that's the only way that, you know, people are going to keep moving forward and having these open spaces where you can write authentically and you can produce authentically as well. So yeah, brilliant.
No, I think that was a great point, Karen, because that's something David Spicer used to say to me. And I remember reading one of his scripts, and it listed virtually every sort of perverse sexual practice you could think of. And we were putting this play out on Zoom during lockdown. And I was like, this is as far to the edge now as we're going to be put. You know, my mum could be watching this, and then, but like David said, if it upsets you, because we had some actors who refused to do it.
Right.
We had some actors who said, "Oh no, I can't say those words. I'm not happy saying that," and that's fine. But like David said, well, ask yourself why, and I think that's what theatre should do, and because it's a safe space, isn't it? It's somewhere where you can. Comedy is. That's why. You know, that's why for me comedy exists. That you can explore things that are a bit tricky in a very safe way, you know.
Mm.
And if you do get upset, well, then why is it that you're getting upset? And that's theatre asking you a question. And for me, that's what call me old fashioned, but that's what theatre should do, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's you get to experience something without actually having to experience it personally.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it does it
And
great.
it's not real.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's no actual sex party going on, people.
I had a few people, friends, who stopped teaching in the last few years because, in their judgments, teaching drama to uh, to the current generation was pretty nigh impossible
Mm.
because they were not sophisticated enough to divide personal challenge from character challenge and what have you. And I remember it was the week that RADA declared itself a safe space that two of my friends quit teaching.
Right.
The beacon of hope is that I believe a term or so ago, RADA introduced the concept of the brave space, which I
Okay.
presume you can choose which you operate in. But that's just really interesting that
Yeah.
one's having to wean this generation back to the reality that you know that life is tough and you're always going to come across opinions and attitudes you do not agree with. And
Mm,
it's no good tying your identity to your own, because then you're literally a target. You're then
mm.
a target for the rest of your life, emotionally.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that's why identity, I think, crept into the sex party. There's a lot about identity in it.
Mm.
Um, um, it was an interesting play to write. It wrote itself once I decided who was arriving. Um, you wind up your tin toys and off they go, and they don't always do what you imagine. And then you try and bring it to some sort of resolution. Uh, that's certainly how this play was written.
So
Um,
where did the original concept or idea? You've said that you like having that freedom. You like writing about sex and comedy. So how did this particular concept kind of find its initial feet before you then started writing and the characters went off and kind of took on a world of their own? But where did it come from for you?
well, it had a personal inspiration in that. Yeah, I had a couple of invites to such events. Um, but really, the event that I'm writing about is not a real event. It's me talking to people who, yeah, were on the scene.
Mm.
And then the way and partly, yeah, those people then appeared in the play, or similar people. I based a lot of the characters on people I know, whether or not they were players in that environment. Um, but yeah, I kind of set myself a mystery ride, really, uh, to see where it would go. Uh, does that make
It
sense?
does, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. And to extend that then, Shaun, you've already sort of mentioned, you're looking for stuff that pushes boundaries and, is free to just speak its own truth. So what was it about this particular play then, after you were sort of introduced to Terry, that made you like, yes, this is the one that we've got to do?
Firstly, I've always been a big fan of Terry's
Mm.
stuff. Dead funny is I just think is the perfect play. For me, it's I always have said that because it just has stupidity and silliness and it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
and that's just what a good play should be, make you laugh, make you cry, and make you think. And so, obviously, and when I chatted with Terry we had a chat about Hitchcock Blonde when we were doing that, and he just dropped in the sex party. That was his latest project, and it just depicted just the nature of of just the exploration of this slightly taboo but very popular practice. It is very popular, although people probably keep a lid on it. But and it just appealed that it was going to be risky, it was going to be challenging, it was going to sort of provoke that agenda we talked about, where the sterility of theatre and you can't say this and you can't do that. So all that was just music to my ears, and then I read the script, and then I just thought, yeah, this is just great. And it was the combination of a brilliant script, a brilliant writer, and then when Terry said he needs to direct it, it's like, wow. so so it's but I think at its core is that sort of it's just that challenge and just that, show some reality. This sort of stuff is probably going on in your next door neighbour's house, and you
Yeah.
don't know. And you're seeing people who you work with who could be into as Terry says, players,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't know. So I think there is a growing sort of interest in it. So it's just the sort of naughtiness, the
Yeah.
challengingness of it, and again, it's the chance to sort of, work with Terry on it.
And it brilliantly, as you know, you've mentioned, Terry, and your work does, the humor. You know, you've got this dark humor that just feeds the characters, but that, you know, even if you haven't experienced that world, you're going to recognize the humor within the characters as just natural, real humor. And it's used so clever because, you know, you've said you are touching on topics such as gender politics or consent and sexual freedom. But because you're using this humor, it's never sort of done in a preachy way, but neither is it done so frivolously that it's insensitive either. It's like that dark humor, and it just like sits perfectly in the right spot to bring these topics forward. Yeah, it's done so clever. So there's not really a question there, but more of a more of a discussion. Yeah, it's just a clever way of doing it.
I think most of the best of what I've come up with has a serious core, but that's not necessarily where one started the writing of it. One starts the writing of it looking for a comic conflict, really, and the core of the play, the serious core of the play, kind of develops, and then suddenly it's there, which usually means you've done a lot of writing, and Act Two is absolutely not working yet. Once you've decided what the core of your piece is, you probably know what the story is. Once you know what the story is, you have to sit down with Act Two and make it the story. So that's kind of the process that happens. Um, I mean, in this play, Act Two is probably darker. Well, is darker um, than Act One. Act One is a kind of Alan Ayckbourn play, which is why I set it in the kitchen, not the living room, um, because that's where all the best parties happen.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, and as I say, Act Two developed um, once Lucy, who is a trans woman, arrives, and she's a kind of psychic domino who knocks all the dominoes over. And what gets revealed about motive and character. And it's yeah, I mean, it's I'm very proud of it. Um, uh, yeah,
And it was on in London as well, wasn't it? It's been on, been performed before, and it did a really good job there as well. So, are there any changes since it's been brought to Liverpool?
the London production was everybody in this business had what we call the coming out of lockdown experience, which is everybody put plays on too soon.
Mm.
Uh, and people got ill. So if you saw the original cast, you were very lucky. Um, I had two COVID in the company that I had for a new play. I had two COVID absences, including the leading man for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I had one resignation because of exhaustion and fear. Um, when we went into technical rehearsal, we'd had exactly 4 days with the full company.
Wow.
For a new play, that's pretty rough. So what
Mhm.
it was good production, and I'm proud of the production. But what suffered was what I usually do is finish the damn play in the 4 weeks rehearsal. I'd go home and I'd be working every weekend with the stuff I'd learned.
Mm.
So I don't think the play got finished. So the Act Two was 10 minutes longer than it is now, for instance. That's just a for instance. Um, and certain characters weren't honed enough. So yeah, it's a redux version because uh, I got a chance to do after the production
Mm.
what I usually do in the run up to the production. Um, so yeah, it's a more solid piece. Um, and also because I work fairly closely with actors, every time I cast somebody, something gets changed.
Mm. Yeah, that's
Um, yeah, yeah.
brilliant. Brilliant. And finally, then, Shaun, well, and Terry, I suppose, what kind of thing would you say to someone who would want to come and watch this, but might be a little bit nervous or doesn't know what to expect? Because the joy is it's kind of the opposite of what people might think, and it's actually a play that is welcoming for everybody. So, how would you tell people to come and watch this?
Well, for me, it's in Liverpool. You don't often get a chance to
Yeah,
see a production, and as Terry said, it's been adapted a lot. It's still in its sort of childhood.
yeah,
This play, and we don't get chances up in Liverpool to see many premieres or sort of emerging new work by a writer of Terry's stature. But never mind that, the fact that he's directing it, so that's a unique experience, and the cast that has taken Terry probably 6 months to find. And Terry
It's
has
the
has
first
been
time in a long time I've worked without a casting director. Um,
so
and the
Terry's done all the casting himself, and but that has meant, because we've seen hundreds of people, tapes and expressions of interest, but the cast that Terry's assembled is fascinating, and he's not compromised on this.
yeah,
He's known what he's wanted, and he's got what he wanted. So every one of these characters that is in the play has been chosen by Terry, not in on a whim or though that they'll do. Actually being hunted out and challenged, and they've all met up with Terry already to discuss, and some have added a little input even into the script. The character Lucy, Terry had a chat with Lucy, and she had ideas, and so I just think for Liverpool, particularly the Hope Street Theatre, which does put on some new work, but this is sort of like a special event. It's a new play written and directed by Terry, presented by an absolutely fantastic, stellar cast. So whatever your opinions are on sex parties or, or whatever, you'll just see a really, really good cast uh, working brilliantly. And so that in itself is something.
yeah,
But then you have the added, and I know up north, we like a bit of challenge. We sort of, it doesn't really phase us. I find, I think
yeah,
we're more receptive to a little bit more challenge than other areas, and the gritty north. So I think it would, on every level. There's nothing to dislike, and if you don't like it, well then fine. But you go to stuff all the time you don't like, don't
yeah,
you? That's the whole point. Let's just have a conversation and a bit of challenge,
yeah.
and that's what's important about it. But yeah, so I just think the fact it's a unique thing for Liverpool to have something like this, it should be worth the entrance fee alone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Terry, for you, like Shaun has just said there, you've said as well, you're now able to do this play, this project exactly the way that it should have had the time and the space and to do it. So it must mean a lot to you to now be able to get this out there and show it people the way that in your head it was intended.
every time you put something up, it's another experiment. And for me, I'm absolutely intrigued to find out how a Liverpool audience enjoy it. Um, it, it, Most good plays are finished in the bar. Um,
Mm.
and this play is certainly a discursive play. So I'm looking forward to the bar as much as anything else.
Me too.
Um, on a daily basis. Listen, it's a challenging piece for actors, and the bunch of people we've found are incredibly game and up for it. Because anyone who wasn't it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's an incredibly positive cast, and I think it'll be an incredibly positive production. And I'm really interested to meet the audience.
Brilliant. Well, there we go. Audience in waiting. You can catch the Sex Party at Hope Street Theatre, Liverpool, from the 1st of September. And we are very happy that you've been chatting with us today to tell everyone about it. So thank you both so much for your time.